Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
Thank you very much for joining us for Point of View. I have a good announcement to make, a positive that's taking place here in the state of Texas where I sit. And we have posted an article from the Houston Chronicle. It starts out, a bill to effectively ban abortion by making the procedure illegal after a fetal heartbeat is detected has the support of more than 40 lawmakers in the Texas House, including several legislators who could advance the bill out of a key committee. With me today on Point of View is the bill's author. His name is Briscoe Cain. He's a state representative, Republican from Deer Park, and he's joined us before. Briscoe, thank you for joining me.
Howdy, Penna. I'm so happy to be on. Guess what, guys? By the way, the news just can't seem to keep up with really the energy, because last week we were at 40, and today we're at 57.
Fantastic. People are signing on.
Oh yes, very quickly, and be praying, y'all. Today we're expecting the Senate version to be filed, which is really, really important when you have a lift like this, bills that some that are scared of doing the right thing call controversial legislation, right? Mm-hmm. Those things usually need something in the Senate, because leadership, generally, they want to shy away from things, and they don't want to pick up, hot potato unless they're forced to. And so it looks like we'll be forcing their hands.
Well, that's good, because I know that sometimes these pro-family type bills get bottled up and never really come out for a vote in the full House. That's been the mm-hmm. history of our House in recent years. But do you see that being different this time?
Well, the energy around heartbeat bills and just around the subject of life in general. I mean, a lot of people, of course, understand what's happened in Virginia and New York, and we're hearing that over and over again. Some don't realize this is a nationwide effort, okay, that more than 5 states have filed bills to amend their state constitutions to create rights to abortion in state constitutions. Other states are filing legislation to say that there is no right to abortion in their state constitutions. Others are repealing their pre-Roe abortion laws because they're afraid that if Roe v. Wade is struck, that automatically abortion will be illegal tomorrow. So there's a very kind of a large movement. In fact, the heartbeat bill, which says that when the heartbeat is detected, the baby is protected, has been filed in 11 states now. So it's Florida, Kentucky, Maryland, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Ohio, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and West Virginia. In fact, West Virginia, a Democrat has filed it.
So
it's amazing. They can't run from it.
Briscoe, out of all those states, has there been a signature by a governor of a heartbeat bill? Well,
yes. So Iowa, which is not one of the ones I just read, was last year, but it's enjoined right now in a state court, which is really important. So when Planned Parenthood sued, they did not go to federal court. They're afraid of it. So they sued in state court on state grounds, which means there's no federal question, so you can't go to federal court. However, they're probably going to be amending their constitution this year to say there is no right to abortion, and it'll reverse that case. But it has passed both the House and the Senate in Mississippi on February 13th. Governor Bryant there has pledged to sign it. It's just waiting to go to his desk. It came out of a subcommittee in Missouri last week on the 20th. It passed out of a committee, and it's going to the House now, the full House, in Tennessee on February 20th. And you've got it in Ohio again, where it is a top priority there, because after John Kasich vetoed it twice, the new governor DeWine has pledged to sign it, and I hear that the Senate Majority Leader there in Ohio has pledged to move it out by the end of next month, by the middle of next month, actually.
State Representative
So it's
Briscoe Cain is my guest, ladies and gentlemen. This heartbeat bill that he has authored and has been introduced in the Texas House has a lot of support. A heartbeat can be detected in a fetus around 6 weeks. And in Texas, we right now have a law that bans abortion after 20 weeks, 5 months of pregnancy. So this takes it a lot earlier. And certainly if you're pro-life, it's consistent with being pro-life to take it back to conception. But the heartbeat bill goes a long way toward doing that. We have so much technology now. We can hear the heartbeat, and it's so exciting. You've got 4 kids, Briscoe, and I know that, each time when you hear that heartbeat, it's exciting, but for some people, it's bad news. So just talk about the opposition to this, where people are very worried. Number one, that this could set up a challenge to Roe versus Wade, but number two, that it would just prohibit or curtail the right, quote unquote, to abortion.
I think a lot of the fear about these bills is there's one thing sometimes that conservatives forget about is the way we talk about things. And the messaging for this concept of discussing the heartbeat really pulls at people's heartstrings. It makes them think. I mean, for the common person on the street, if we were to say, should we stop abortion at 20 weeks, if they have no concept of what fetal development is going on at 20 weeks, it makes no sense to them. But the heartbeat, they all understand that. We understand this is the universal sign of death. It's the first thing we check to see if someone's alive, right, to see their pulse. And so the messaging is really, really hard for the left to get around. In fact, in Mississippi, in their House, 8 Democrats voted for it, including their Democrat candidate for lieutenant governor. They have to. They can't go home and say they voted against the baby having a heartbeat. Even though we saw, yesterday, these radical senators essentially vote for infanticide, their base just isn't okay with it. And so the opposition we're getting is, of course, out of fear. And what is a consistent message is that they're afraid of overturning Roe. In the past, before President Trump's been there and has gotten his appointments, and we expect by the time these heartbeat bills get to the Supreme Court that Mrs. Ginsburg will probably not be there anymore, but she might surprise us all. That's probably two years away or so. They're complaining about the fear of Roe. They're not saying only that we have no right to tell a woman what she can do with her body or anything like that. Their main fear is this is an assault on Roe, and absolutely it is, 100%. It's what it's designed for.
Briscoe, you're on the right side of really that. I think just in the last couple of weeks we've seen there's a national divide about abortion right now, and it is so drastic. There is such a chasm between those who would, as we saw yesterday, allow infanticide and those who want to protect a baby when you hear the heartbeat and not snuff out a heartbeat of a living being. Mm-hmm. You're on the right side, and I'm so grateful to you for being there, being bold, being a young lawmaker in Texas and doing this. And I just want to compliment you for that. I've known you for a while and watched your career. If you don't know, ladies and gentlemen, Briscoe Cain's a young attorney, but he's worked in these issues before ever taking elected office. So I don't know. I don't have you for very long. So I just want to tell you thank you, and we're with you.
I enjoy being around you and your husband. Y'all have known me, I guess, probably 9 or 10 years now. Just the beauty of this issue is this is, I believe, a winning issue for Republicans going forward, with the National Democrat Party just really going off the rails and losing any sight of just really human dignity. Mm-hmm. And that's why we love the heartbeat bill, because it empowers the beating heart of a tiny, defenseless, unborn baby to stop a life-ending abortion.
Something to be watching. Briscoe Cain, thanks for joining me.
God bless, Penna. Thank you.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Senator Ben Sasse is puzzled. He can't understand why his colleagues in the U.S. Senate don't support his legislative attempt to prevent infanticide from becoming medical practice in this country. He says infanticide shouldn't be a partisan issue. Every single public servant should be able to say it's wrong to leave newborn babies to die. One of the best reasons for this bill came from comments by the governor of Virginia. Ruff Nordham explained that an infant would be delivered and resuscitated if that's what the mother and family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. Senator Sasse admits the governor's frankness is rare, no euphemisms, no weasel words. After the national rejection of the governor's words, you would think the U.S. Senate would quickly pass the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. That did not happen. The bill would require that doctors provide the same level of care to the child born from a botched abortion that they would provide to any other baby at the same state of development. During the 1990s, we heard from many Democratic leaders that they wanted abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. When candidate Bill Clinton and later President Bill Clinton would say that phrase, he would even emphasize the word rare. This is not the Democratic Party of today. The state of New York passed legislation that would essentially allow abortion up to birth. It now appears that Democratic leaders are trying to double down on the issue of abortion, perhaps because they fear the Supreme Court might overturn Roe v. Wade. Senator Sasse concludes that it should not be difficult for the members of the U.S. Congress to affirm that a child outside the womb deserves the protection of our law. Apparently, for some members of Congress, that is asking too much. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From roadside attractions, Run the Race. Two brothers share an unbreakable bond, but life's unexpected adversities put their future in question. Run the Race, rated PG, now playing.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Penna Dexter, and we were just in the last segment on the phone with State Representative Briscoe Cain. He's the author of the Heartbeat Bill, which has been introduced in Texas, and it's just the partial birth abortion fight, which was a 10-year battle to get a ban on partial birth abortion nationally. I said about that back then was that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And it was a good concept to call it a partial birth abortion, to begin to describe what that was, where the baby was partially born. And, there are just times in, I think, a battle, which right now is the battle against abortion and the battle for the sanctity of human life in America. What kind of country are we? Are we one that protects human life? And, you begin to wonder sometimes. But this just is so encouraging to see this bill now moving forward in various states. And I think that, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but so is the sound of a heartbeat. And in Kentucky, when they were considering their heartbeat bill, lawmakers played the sound of a fetal heartbeat moments before approving the bill in a Senate committee. And, a constituent of the bill's lead author offered the audio saying she thought the sound of her unborn baby's heartbeat would be a powerful noise before the vote. And this is according to the Associated Press. And that's very true. And I know perhaps a lot of you listening are parents or grandparents. You've heard these heartbeats because we can do that now at about 6 weeks. And so that is a living, breathing, not breathing yet, but somehow taking in oxygen, human being in the womb. So, I'm just so I'm so happy to be able to report that. I do want to mention another opportunity to get a picture of what abortion is also taking place and has been produced and created in this movie Unplanned, which I know Kirby has had Abby Johnson, it's her story, on the show. And the weekend before last, I was able to see a screening of the film. It's going to come out in theaters on the 29th of March, and we will be talking more about that here on Point of View. But in the news, I think it's just yesterday or the day before, that movie, it's called Unplanned, was slapped with an R rating by the MPAA, Motion Picture Association of America. And just to get the background a little bit, Abby Johnson was a director of an abortion clinic in Texas. And she just came to the conclusion that she could no longer do this, stepped away from it. And the movie really shows how sort of the role of the people that were protesting outside the abortion clinic. They were actually next door. They had a great effect on her, as did other things that happened with her. She had her own abortions. And she stepped away, and this is her story. And it's a very compelling movie. The reason that the movie and it's not good that it got an R rating because that keeps some people away. Some people that really need to be seeing the movie, it may keep away from the movie. And so, that's, it's too bad that it got an R, but I sort of get it because there is a scene in the movie, and this is the one that I guess there are 2 or 3 scenes that are giving it the R rating, but the one that I'm thinking about is the one where Abby Johnson herself has an abortion. It's a medical abortion, and it's not a surgical abortion. You get a pill, and it takes a few days for the abortion to really happen, and there's quite a bit of blood. So that blood is in the movie, and I know people, after I saw it, one friend who'd had abortions told me that was so offensive to her, even though she's so pro-life, she's in the pro-life movement, that she didn't think it should be in the movie, and she complained. And so there are all kinds of reactions to it. But for something like abortion, I think we need to talk about what's true, what's really happening, and what's real. And, there's blood in so many movies that we see today, and when there is blood in a procedure, we should probably see it if we're going to try to tell the true story. So, but the pro-life film Unplanned has been slapped with this rating, and it says it will be rated R for some, quote, disturbing bloody images, unless all scenes of abortions are removed or altered. This is according to the Hollywood Reporter. So I guess there's still time to do that. But PureFlix, the film production company, says not only will it not alter the film's pro-life message to get a PG-13 rating, it won't officially appeal the decision because it doesn't want to delay its distribution efforts. And here's the quote that's, to me, telling. A 15-year-old girl can get an abortion without her parents' permission, but she can't see this movie without adult supervision. That is sad. This is Ken Rather, Executive Vice President of Distribution for PureFlix. And so the filmmakers have fired off a letter of complaint to the Motion Picture Association CEO, Charles Rivkin. And they're saying, we consider the MPAA's current standards to be deeply flawed insofar as they allowed scenes of remarkably graphic sex, violence, degradation, murder, and mayhem to have a PG rating, whereas our film, highlighting the grave dangers of abortion in a straightforward manner, is considered dangerous for the American people to view. That's from one of the co-directors of Unplanned. And the R rating, of course, as you probably know, restricts a movie to those over 17 unless accompanied by a parent or another adult guardian, although it would be a very good movie for people to go to as a family so that it could promote discussion. And there are a couple other scenes in the movie there's one scene where the baby just disappears from the sonogram. It's showing a sonogram while a surgical abortion is being done, and then you can see clearly a baby. And then it just disappears. And to me, that was the saddest one. That's the one that really brought tears to my eyes. And a couple other spots where it's hard to watch. But it's a compelling movie. The actress who plays Abby Johnson does a wonderful job, as do others in the movie. It was just well done, and I think you sense her transformation. She's sort of an all business type person, and nobody loves abortion, but some people see it as good for women. And all the people that work in this Planned Parenthood clinic feel that way. They feel that they're on some sort of that they're doing good in the culture. They really, truly feel that way. And I think that's where the American people are divided on this whole idea of Planned Parenthood, because it's allowing women to go on with their lives, in a sense, without being hindered by motherhood. And for some people, that's just a practical statement. It's sort of a, I don't know. It makes you look like a person who is efficient, accomplished. I'm going to move on from this. I'm not going to look back. But I think something else that the movie does is it helps you to understand that once you have an abortion in your life, it's there, and you can't erase what has happened. If you are a person who's had an abortion and you look back at it, you're going to feel hurt and pain. You can also get the forgiveness of Christ, and that is very much on display in this movie. The Christian aspect of the film and the forgiveness aspect is there. And so, I think that's just another reason to see the movie and to get people to see it. Yes, it might be hard for post-abortive women to see it, or men who have participated in an abortion. But again, film is about life, and a lot of movies are made to send a message or have an impact. What more important message can we send than the reality of what abortion really is and what's taking place in this country and at these clinics? And I think also just the corporate mindset of Planned Parenthood is depicted there. And that's something that people need to understand too, because we send money to Planned Parenthood in various ways through Medicaid and other ways. Funds are funneled to Planned Parenthood. They're not legally supposed to go directly to abortion or for abortion, but it's hard to separate the two in many ways. And I will talk about something President Trump has done to do that a little bit later in the program as we move into the second hour. But next up, I'm going to just kind of switch gears to another issue that's important across the country, but very much so here in the state of Texas, which is property taxes. And another battle in the legislature and the Senate here in Texas is going to be property taxes and school finance. We've got to have some reform there. As someone who knows a lot about it, Vance Ginn from the Texas Public Policy Foundation will join me. So stay with us for more of Point of View. We'll be right back.
Why should you become a partner with Point of View Radio? Because for decades, this team has made a significant difference in lives and communities across the nation. Because America is dying for lack of biblical wisdom about life and culture. You should give because your gift will make possible cutting-edge information on issues that matter, information you won't hear anywhere else. Why? Because your gift will change lives, because you'll influence our culture with biblical truth, and because you can make a difference for the future. Our nation needs a truth team very badly. Support Point of View Radio today at pointofview.net. Click on Join the Truth Team and choose your level of support. Pointofview.net or call 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or mail that first donation to Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221, Box 30, Dallas 75221. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
Up to this point in the program on Point of View today, the subject has been the sanctity of human life. But I want to switch gears to really property ownership, the right to own your property and not have the taxes on it increase to the point where you lose the property. I grew up in the state of California, and in my younger years, they had to pass a bill to curtail the rise in property taxes because home values were going up so fast, and that's still in effect there. And looking at what's happened in Texas with our great prosperity, rising property values, we're facing an issue of property taxes. With me to discuss this is Vance Ginn, and he is a director of the Center for Economic Prosperity. He's also senior economist at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. This is one of the nation's premier free market think tanks. I went to their conference last month and was just blown away by the experts there. One of them is with me. Vance Ginn, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me on the show.
I want to talk about property taxes and why they are rising so fast here in Texas right now.
Well, you're correct. I mean, we have skyrocketing property taxes across this great state, and too many people are being forced out of their homes and their businesses. It's just really a sad state of affairs that affects families. It affects individuals' livelihood overall. When you look at the last 20 years, property taxes have increased by 212%. Which is almost twice as fast as the average taxpayer's ability to pay, which shows you why many people are being forced out of their homes. And it's really based on, really excessive spending. Spending is what drives taxes, and so there are a number of measures that the legislature is currently looking at to start to curtail the skyrocketing property taxes across the state.
So when people start talking about lowering rates, and we can get specific in a minute, others will come back and say, well, then we won't have police, then we won't have first responders. And you just nailed it, because spending is the problem. I mean, there are things we have to spend money on, but we spend a lot of money on things that we probably shouldn't be, don't we?
Oh, that's exactly right. I mean, whether you're looking at, so there's really 4 different types of property tax jurisdictions when you look at counties, cities, special purpose districts, and then your school districts. And you can kind of go through each one of those and find some excess, some waste that's within each one of their budgets. And so we need to get back to looking at each one of these dollars that they're spending are taxpayer dollars. We can't forget that. And that's coming out of the pockets of families who are trying to put food on their tables and so forth. And we understand that there are going to be some roles for government, no doubt. But let's make sure that they are limited in nature so more money can stay in the pockets of for families.
So Texas currently funds most education through property taxes. And, some people say, well, we don't fund education well enough at the state level. Should there be a shift in where these monies come from to fund education, or do we see a lot of waste there too?
Well, if you look at the education budget for public schools across the state, we spend a little bit more than $60 billion. And part of that comes from local property taxes. That flows into the buckets first. And then the state fills in the rest of that bucket. And if you happen to be in a district known as Robin Hood, where some of your money goes to other districts, then your bucket is basically overflowing, right, for that particular district. And, look, if you look at school districts, they've been funded quite well over time. Some do make the case that we need to spend more, and maybe we do, but if you just compare it to population growth or student enrollment growth, right, and inflation, the education spending is actually up since the 04-05 school year. So there has been a lot of money going into public schools. And to your other point, though, on maybe waste at school districts, I think you can find quite a bit of that, whether it be the water parks at La Jolla ISD or whether it be the level of bureaucracy, the administrative increases that have happened over time, instead of more money going to the classroom, which is where the education happens.
Yeah, amen to that. Listen, I know that you have at Texas Public Policy Foundation have had something sort of a roadshow, because there is this sort of coexistence of needing to fund education and needing to lower property taxes. And it's possible to do all of this, but you've had to make the case to people around the state, haven't you?
We really have. I mean, there is a big push to continue to increase money to public education. And what we're saying is, we should use the money that we're spending now more wisely. Not putting as much money into bureaucracies, for example, or not putting money towards things like a water park, but actually putting it towards teachers. Only about less than 40 cents on every dollar actually goes to the classroom. And whenever you think about that, that means that the one person who, besides the parents or having in family or having the most influence on a child's education, is not receiving those dollars. And really, quality teachers should be paid more across the state, and that would also entail or mean an incentive for quality teachers who are outside of the education system today to enter back in or enter for the first time. And so we think that there should be some merit-based pay for teachers along the way and really help to improve our education system.
Okay, your proposal, or the one that I think Texas Public Policy Foundation has supported, has been basically explain it with the 2.5%.
Yep.
Just explain that. You can do it better than I can.
No worries. It's really complicated because, with government, they try to make these things complicated. But we've got to find a way to slow the growth rate of property taxes. Property taxes, like I said, over the last 20 years, if you look on an annual basis, have went up 5.8% per year, which means that they're doubling every 12 years. I mean, and people's incomes aren't doing the same thing. So in order to slow that growth rate, we think that there should be what's called a rollback rate, which means that a local city, local county, any local taxing jurisdiction could only increase their revenue by 2.5%. So it's a 2.5% rollback rate. And if they want to go above the 2.5%, all they have to do is hold an election in that November and ask the voters and say, look, can we go up to 5%, 6%? They'll go to the voters, and the voters will say yes or no on that ballot. And so really what this does is it increases local control by putting more power in the hands of the voters to have a say within the budget process for these local governments. And look, I mean, if they need to go above that, if they need more money for police, then I think that vote, and they'll make a case to the voters, I don't think the voters will have any problem with that. But if there's other excess that's happening within these local government budgets, then I think that's really where you need to start to trim some of that to make sure that we are prioritizing each and every taxpayer dollar accordingly to make sure that we're securing liberty all across the state of Texas.
So you mentioned figures of 5 to 6% growth that some people I think have debated in years past. Now it's 2.5%, and people are saying, well, that's just way too low. We could never get there. Do you think that's like a negotiating tool, or do you think 2.5% is really doable?
Well, okay, I mean, I think it could be a negotiating tool, but I do think that it's doable. There are a lot of other states that have a very similar rate for their rollback rate. So this is being done in other states like New York, for example, which is not a conservative state, and yet they have a rollback rate of 2.5%. Why couldn't we do that here in Texas? Also, when you look at what's the reason for 2.5%? Over the last 20 years, that's been the average annual increase in price inflation, has been 2.5%. And if you go back to whenever they raised the rollback rate from 5% to 8%, which was in 1981, that was when the Texas legislature raised it, that was during a period when we had double-digit rates of inflation. And on the Senate floor, one of the members actually said, whenever inflation is tamed or when it starts to come down, we need to reevaluate this metric and lower it. Well, inflation went down over the last 12 months. It's only been up 1.9%. And over the last 20 years, it's only averaged 2.5%, but they've never lowered it again. And so now is the time to really do that and start to slow the growth rate of skyrocketing property taxes.
Dr. Vance Ginn is my guest. Vance, when you look at our leadership right now, our governor in Texas, Dan Patrick, and also the Speaker of the House, when you get the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker of the House, so you get those three state leaders together, all agreeing on the necessity of dramatically lowering property taxes, or at least controlling this. Yep. They are in agreement, aren't they? They are.
I mean, they had a joint press conference, all of them, all three of them, along with the chair of the Senate Property Tax Committee, Paul Betancourt, along with the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, Dustin Burrows. They had a joint press conference to announce Senate Bill 2 over in the Senate and House Bill 2 in the House that were identical bills. Now, what's been passed out of the Senate Property Tax Committee has changed a little bit. There's an exemption out of this overall bill for local governments that have less than $15 million in total revenue. Instead of having the 2.5% rollback rate that triggers an automatic election, it would be an 8% rate, so it would stay higher. And so what the Senate did was said, okay, let's give an opt-in provision to these local governments to where they can hold an election in May of 2020, and the voters would say, yes, we want it to be 2.5%, or no, we want it to stay at 8%. So it gives voters even more control over that. So that's been the big difference so far. So there's a lot of momentum moving forward to get this done.
Ladies and gentlemen, our call-in line is 800-351-1212. If you have a question about property taxes for my guest, Dr. Vance Ginn, please give us a call, 800-351-1212. We will be right back.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. In May of 1915, Major John McCrae buried his friend. It is believed that after the burial, he penned the now famous poem, In Flanders Fields. This is what he wrote. In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the lark still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunsets glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. The reference to crosses was no accident. These were the markers used for temporary gravestones across Europe. When the graves were made permanent, the world community rejected efforts to convert the temporary cross-shaped gravestones into rounded tombstones. That is why today, across America, many veterans' memorials are cross-shaped. And that is why we defend them. Today, the foe of McCrae's poem are those wishing to purge the religious from public view, including veterans' memorials bearing religious imagery. But we will not break faith with those who died. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
I'm Kelly Shackelford, President and Chief Counsel of First Liberty Institute. Let me ask you, what if America's best attorneys from the very top law firms got together to defend religious freedom in court? That's exactly what's happening at First Liberty. And the best news? We're winning over 90% of our legal actions. Come learn more at firstliberty.org. You'll be encouraged. That's firstliberty.org.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
We're talking taxes in Texas here on Point of View. Vance Ginn, PhD, is my guest. He is director of the Center for Economic Prosperity and also senior economist at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I might mention that Texas Public Policy Foundation works on Texas issues, but it also works on issues that are common to other states. And, you know, Vance, Texas is so important to the nation right now because we are growing. People are coming in from other states. Businesses are forming or moving here. And so if we allow ourselves to become like some of those states where people are coming from, they're leaving high tax, high regulation areas coming to Texas. But there's the risk that we become those states like Texas becoming California. You don't want the Californians coming in and seeing California here, do you?
No, that's right. Yeah, we need to make sure that it's the property tax is restrained.
Yeah, that's one of the areas, and others too. But we in Texas, because of this philosophy of more local control, smaller government, that's part of what has been behind the economic success story of Texas, and so we have to watch that.
Yeah, it really has. You're right.
So Vance Ginn is my guest, and let me go back to this property tax issue. Texas Public Policy Foundation is saying allowing voters to weigh in on tax increases over 2.5% each year, which is just what he just explained. And this is part of these two bills, House Bill 2 and Senate Bill 2, strengthens the ultimate local control by empowering citizens with stronger oversight of the governments they elected to serve them. This is a piece out of the Daily Canon, which if you're interested in these issues, you can sign up for this. It's sort of a little daily newsletter that comes out from Texas Public Policy Foundation. It's very informative. And if you're listening from another state, it's informative for everyone because the principles that are described here are, they really apply their economic principles. And Texas has been succeeding, but we can't get complacent. There's this false panic, says this article, about not having enough money for public safety budgets and filling potholes. But really the truth is that there is still waste, as my guest, Dr. Ginn, has mentioned across the board. And I want you to talk to me because you've mentioned a couple times this idea of water parks. What is that?
Yeah, that's this school district, La Jolla ISD, down in the Rio Grande Valley area. Basically, they built a water park, a $20 million water park, and they went in and used their general fund revenue. And if you look at their actual budget, about 75% of their budget is funded from state revenue, meaning that they're a recipient of Robin Hood dollars.
They're not one of those ones whose bucket is overflowing.
That's right. No. That's exactly right. Their bucket is pretty low when it comes to the local property taxes flowing in, so they receive a lot of money from others across the state. And look, there's a lot of other districts that do that across the state, but not all districts are building water parks with those dollars. So it's almost like, others, myself, my state taxes that I'm paying in sales taxes are going down to La Jolla ISD, and they're using that for that sort of purpose, which is not part of the educational learning outcomes that we really want from our public schools.
So tell us about the water park. Does it actually exist on a school campus in a park? Where is it?
So it does, yes. And there's large playscape, if you will, with the tubes, and you can go down the tubes, and it's a pretty immaculate looking water park.
Sounds like an eyesore to me.
Yeah, I guess you could call it that as well. It's quite fascinating, though, just to think about. I'm not sure exactly what their reasoning. One thing I've heard is that they would say, well, some of their students don't have anything else to do in the afternoon, so instead of them getting into trouble or other things, that they could go to this water park, and maybe that would help for them to have more things to do in the afternoon. But I always come back to it. If these are education dollars, we should be using them for education, and that's not part of the education for improving learning outcomes.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's not only one school district. I know in Collin County where I live, there's a water park that I can see if I walk out of my neighborhood. And so they exist around the state, and, everybody funds them in various ways, and some districts are richer than others. But the idea that Vance Ginn brings up that state money would be going to fund something like this, and then when you think of the complaints that the education system needs more money because it's not able to teach children adequately, or we have not enough teachers or whatever, to think that, perhaps doing homework after school rather than going to a water park might be a better option.
Amen. Yeah. And I think when I consider these sort of what I would call frivolous spending, you're correct, though. It's not just one school district. It's not just one city. It's not just one county. We really should start looking at all of our governments and making sure that they're spending taxpayer dollars wisely. part of that is by looking at their budget priorities. And what are they prioritizing? As you mentioned earlier, some of these local governments are now saying, well, look, we're going to have to cut city police or the firefighters, or, we're going to have to make some cuts if we put this 2.5% rollback rate in. And that's just not true. They're calling it a cap, like this is a 2.5% cap in their revenue. That's not true. It's a trigger, right, that triggers an election to where voters can approve more money or just say, no, 2.5% is enough. It's giving the local voter more control. And in the process, look, each one of these city governments and county governments should be prioritizing their dollars that are going to secure liberty the most. And if that's police, which I think there's a good argument to be made there, well, then let's make sure that that's a priority within the budget and then wean off some of the other areas that they're spending excess dollars on.
Vance, I just want to ask you one more major question, because I know this is what's going to be worked on, and that is, there's sort of a balance between reforming property taxes and reforming school finance. Both need to be done. So as you go around on this road show that you guys have been doing, talking to citizens and educating people, do you already have formulated a balance or a way that this will work together so that neither will be affected in a detrimental way?
Yeah, I think it is important, as you're getting at, is to balance these out. And we need property tax reform in the sense of cutting the growth rate over time, which I think House Bill 2 and Senate Bill 2 are good steps in that direction. And look, we're also going out as a foundation and saying we not only need property tax reform, but we need relief. So where we need to start cutting property taxes, that to actually lower property tax bills. And we have a plan that would do that, would say, look, let's limit state spending to 4% growth over a biennium, and any revenue above that would be put towards lowering the school maintenance and operation property tax. So it would basically be a swap over time, just using excess dollars at the state level while still funding schools and maintaining their funding over time and actually increasing it over time based on enrollment growth. And so by doing that and lowering property taxes and slowing the growth rate, then we can also focus on getting more money into the classroom for a better, higher quality education system overall. And I think you do that by paying quality teachers more, have a merit-based merit-based pay system. That would put more money in the classroom. And also just thinking about, okay, how much money are we spending on bureaucracy, administration? Some of that's going to be necessary. We certainly understand that. But let's try to also find ways to reduce those dollars going outside the classroom so that way students have the best opportunity to learn.
Vance, you make too much sense. It's amazing to watch the growth of the bureaucracy in the schools and how much, how many people do we really need in the district headquarters in comparison to the people we've got actually touching our children and their hearts and minds in the classroom. Thank you so much for explaining all of this to us today, and thanks for being with me.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Next up, we will talk with Jason Yates from My Faith Votes. We'll be back after this.
The leader looked around the table, motioning to the older men. He said, "You're here to remind us how faithful God has been in the past. Now, you middle-aged guys, you keep us focused on what God is doing right now. Make sure we don't stop. And you younger guys, keep us looking forward. Imagine what God wants us to be doing in the years to come." There's a lot of wisdom there. We have to be thankful for the past, focused on the present, and mindful to plan for a great future. Many listeners have made bold moves to partner with Point of View Radio and accomplish great things for more than 45 years. But as we look around, we do see many positive things, and I think we can all admit there's a lot more to be done. It's time to think about your next bold move, what you can do to invest for our nation's future. Be thinking about that. If you have an answer now, don't wait. Make your next bold move now. Give online at pointofview.net or call 800-347-5151. It's our future. The time is now. Pointofview.net and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kirby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
Thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. I am so glad you're with me today for Point of View. And, if you look at sort of across the cultural landscape and think about the idea that if Christians voted, if most Christians voted, they voted biblically, they voted their values that they hold dear to their hearts, this country would be a very different place. We would not be looking at a Senate vote, which we'll discuss in a few minutes, in which our U.S. Senate declined to protect babies who were the result of an abortion but were born alive, to give them medical care, to require that. We would not be looking at all these ideas that are coming up now in the next presidential campaign to implement socialism through our medical system, through providing things to people across the country at tremendous taxpayer expense. There are so many issues that face us today here in this nation that would not be issues if Christians voted their values, but they don't. They're either too busy, or they're not informed, or they don't have the tools. And with me is someone who is trying to change that and doing a good job of it. His name is Jason Yates, and he heads up an organization called My Faith Votes. He's actually been in the private sector working in Fortune 100 companies, but back in 2015, he left corporate America. He assumed the role as CEO of My Faith Votes, and we'll ask him about that process. And now this organization that he leads, My Faith Votes, has made an impact on Christian voter turnout. It did so in 1916, and I'm certain that that will be multiplied in 2020, and certainly in the midterm elections also. They make a difference. I get their emails every day, and I'm always so interested. Had a chance to meet him, and I'm so glad, Jason, that you were able to come into the studio. Of course, I was pleasantly surprised that My Faith Votes is actually headquartered here in Dallas, so I got to have you in. So thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Jason, first, just personally, tell us about why you thought it was important to leave a successful career in business and move into this this arena of encouraging Christians to vote and to be involved.
My Faith Votes got started out of one simple thing that we learned, which was that in 2012, there were 25 million Christians who were registered to vote but didn't vote. They stayed on the sidelines. And that blew me away. And I've got a couple small kids. I know there are a lot of people with kids, grandkids, concerned about the future of our nation, concerned about the values and the direction that we're headed. And to just know that there are that many people who share your faith and share what you believe and are staying on the sidelines. And I think that there's this strong belief, this buy-in that there's this separation of church and state, and that we shouldn't bring the values of our faith into the public square. I will tell you, everybody brings their values to the voting booth. It's just a question of whether or not it's under this umbrella called religion or not, or faith or not. I guarantee you there are a lot of progressive liberal folks who bring their values. It's just not under that umbrella. So it was out of that concern that we just felt we need to do something. Each of us can do something. What can we do? Well, we're going to do whatever we can to get as many Christians out and voting.
You know, this radio program's been around for 45 years, and we've been about that. We've always thought that it was important to educate Christians, inform them, and get them active. And yet, obviously, there's still a big problem. And 2012 was that was kind of a wake-up call in a sense. I think perhaps part of it in the presidential race there was that people maybe were not excited about Mitt Romney, and they wanted one different. But, still, the difference in the presidential race was like night and day, and that gap between one party and another is getting bigger. The left is going so far off the rails that it's like an emergency.
It really is. But I think you talk about the gap. In 2012, we mentioned it, 25 million Christians didn't vote who were registered. And the difference in that election was less than 5 million votes. And the average over recent history in a presidential election is under 10 million votes. So we do have the opportunity and the ability, as you mentioned leading into this segment, that we can be the difference. And I think My Faith Votes is really making a difference. And I can share more about that.
How are you doing that? What are some of your strategies?
Well, we ask Christians to do three things. So we ask them to pray, to think, and to vote. And so we are providing resources and equipping them with tools to pray. We are helping them think from a biblical worldview, much like your radio show is. And then we're really investing in technology that will help them vote and vote in every election. One of the things that My Faith Votes did this past election, in the 70,000 elections that happened in 2018, we were the only provider that I know of that provided a Christian conservative voter guide in all 70,000 elections. So we are trying to help people with reminders about elections and equipping them with tools to be able to make good choices. But more than that, we are using the influence of influential Christian leaders in ways of encouraging, inspiring, motivating Christians across this nation to be engaged and to be voting.
So you've got your national spokesman, I guess, for lack of a better word, is Mike Huckabee, right?
It's Mike Huckabee. What greater person, I believe, to be involved with us than someone who has been a pastor, who has been in politics and been a governor, who's ran for president, and who is in media and has a voice, has a megaphone to help amplify what we're trying to say. Now, there may be one other person who is maybe a little bit on par with Mike Huckabee, and that would be Dr. Carson, Dr. Ben Carson. And he was our honorary national chairman when we kicked off, and when he stepped out of the presidential race, he agreed to be a part of My Faith Votes. Of course, now he's part of the administration, so we naturally reached out to Mike Huckabee.
But you've benefited from Ben Carson's success in launching this organization, and we're so grateful for the tools. I think that's what people need. And, we'll talk a little bit after the break. Number one, I want to kind of report on the Senate vote and talk about the life issue because it's a big motivator for a lot of believers. And then also just the millennial generation. We've been focusing on them here at Point of View because, number one, that it's a huge cohort, and number two, many of them do need to be educated in practical Christian values and how they relate to politics. So we'll do all of that right after this. My guest is Jason Yates from My Faith Votes.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Senator Ben Sasse is puzzled. He can't understand why his colleagues in the U.S. Senate don't support his legislative attempt to prevent infanticide from becoming medical practice in this country. He says infanticide shouldn't be a partisan issue. Every single public servant should be able to say it's wrong to leave newborn babies to die. One of the best reasons for this bill came from comments by the governor of Virginia. Ralph Northam explained that an infant would be delivered and resuscitated if that's what the mother and family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. Senator Sasse admits the governor's frankness is rare, no euphemisms, no weasel words. After the national rejection of the governor's words, you would think the U.S. Senate would quickly pass the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. That did not happen. The bill would require that doctors provide the same level of care to the child born from a botched abortion that they would provide to any other baby at the same state of development. During the 1990s, we heard from many Democratic leaders that they wanted abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. When candidate Bill Clinton and later President Bill Clinton would say that phrase, he would even emphasize the word rare. This is not the Democratic Party of today. The state of New York passed legislation that would essentially allow abortion up to birth. It now appears that Democratic leaders are trying to double down on the issue of abortion, perhaps because they fear the Supreme Court might overturn Roe v. Wade. Senator Sasse concludes that it should not be difficult for the members of the U.S. Congress to affirm that a child outside the womb deserves the protection of our law. Apparently, for some members of Congress, that is asking too much. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From roadside attractions, Run the Race. Two brothers share an unbreakable bond, but life's unexpected adversities put their future in question. Run the Race, rated PG, now playing.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Welcome back to Point of View. I'm Penna Dexter. In studio is Jason Yates of My Faith Votes. And Jason, the way you get people involved in elections is to have issues that they care about. And I think for Christians, of course, the life issue has always been one of those. And we had this vote, and it is a sanctity of life issue, but it's not really an abortion vote in one sense. It's called the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, which was voted on whether it would move forward or not in the U.S. Senate yesterday. And the vote was 53 to 44, so it will not move forward because it did not get 60 votes. Amazingly, this bill would require health remedies and doctors to care for babies who survive abortion.
Yeah.
So they're babies. They're not fetuses, as many in the media would call them. And this is an emotional issue for Americans, and could be a real driver, I think, for people to start getting involved if they have any kind of belief in God.
Yeah, I said that this was maybe one of the most important votes in our generation, because this really is establishing what our core values as a nation is. And this centers on life. This wasn't about abortion. This was about a baby that's alive outside of the womb and needing care. And I was amazed, Penna, when I listened to the session in the Senate, and as senators got up and spoke about this, and I listened to what they were saying in their arguments for or against, but those arguments against this bill stood on the tired same arguments that this is more about choice and women's health care than it is about the sanctity of life. And as I said, this wasn't about choice. It wasn't about abortion access. This was about caring for a baby that needed care.
We've placed the results of this vote and also the breakdown of the senators that voted. In case you're interested, ladies and gentlemen, all across the nation, you can look and see how your senator voted. There were 3 Republican senators that didn't vote. They just weren't, guess, available. They didn't make the trip. Murkowski from Alaska, Kramer from, I think that's South Dakota. North Dakota, and Tim Scott from
South Carolina. So those 3 Republicans didn't vote. And there were 3 Democrats that did vote for those protections. Yeah, that was Manchin from West Virginia. It was Robert Casey from Pennsylvania and Doug Jones from Alabama.
So, that's how it went. You can't get very many Democrats in this country right now to vote to protect a baby who's born alive, the victim of an abortion. And I think one of the things we've seen in the lead up to this, and Ben Sasse, of course, has done heroic work getting this, just speaking on the floor of the Senate and just getting this out there, is people who've survived abortions have been speaking out. And there are many more of them than you would think. I mean, Gianna Jessen was one that we've all known for a couple of decades, but there are many and that survive abortions. And, they're so grateful for their lives, and to have them speak is, I think, helpful.
Yeah, I was listening to, I believe it was Senator Sasse yesterday, and mentioning that there was someone right off off the floor, that was a survivor. And, she was 42 years old, a family, and flourishing. And so these are the people that we're talking about. These are the people we're defending.
So as we look at these things, and we've looked at, of course, New York with the pink lights celebrating late-term abortion in New York. We've looked at all the controversy in Virginia, where their late-term abortion bill, it didn't make it, but, that was even there. You've got states on the other side, like Texas. I spoke with Briscoe Cain earlier in the program. He's just introduced a heartbeat bill here. Everybody's kind of setting up and getting ready in case Roe versus Wade falls, and so that their states will be sort of ready for that. And so I think this brings the abortion issue out there. And, another piece of news, and we've posted this, is that there's been a poll out, a Marist poll, and the movement of Americans who identify as pro-choice and pro-life. I mean, it's pretty much even now. 47% to 47% say they're either pro-choice or pro-life. And that's been since early January. That's been a huge shift. It was 55% said they were pro-choice in the same poll in early January, and now it's only 47%. So something's happening with all this that's in the news with public opinion, and it just seems that your organization could capitalize on that.
Yeah, there's also another poll. I don't know if it was the same one, but 80% of the population today supports restrictions on abortion after the first trimester.
It's the same Marist poll.
It is, and that's up 5%. And so there is a movement, there is a pro-life support and recognition of that value, yet we have elected officials who are not representing us in our views.
So one of the I think the cohorts is millennials. They have been polling pro-life, more pro-life than their parents, the baby boomers. And yet that has not translated necessarily into enough political power, has it?
It really hasn't. And that's why I think My Faith Votes is putting so much, such a high priority on reaching millennials and Gen Z. Right now, those two generations combined are bigger than any other voting generation. So they really do have influence in elections. And if we're not talking to them, somebody else is. And we know that those in colleges and universities, the messages that they're receiving, whether it's about life or whether it's about issues like socialism, others, that they're receiving messages that don't align with a biblical worldview.
So what are some of your strategies for them?
So the biggest that we have is something that we call our Because I Care campaign. And we've been blessed to partner with an organization called I Am Tomorrow. Audria Decker is the executive director of I Am Tomorrow. She's a millennial herself. She started this organization when she was only 16 years old, and she is doing a fabulous job of reaching young students on Christian colleges and universities to encourage them and equip them around the voting process. So helping them be informed and aware and equipped to cast their votes. And so this last year, well, in 2016, we partnered with them. We were on 43 different campuses. This last year in the midterm elections, we were on 116 different campuses, equipping them with some technology, mobile technology, because that's how they get their information, reminders and tools to vote effectively and to gain a biblical worldview on key issues.
You know, just things as basic as getting them registered and getting them to vote when they're away from their home. I mean, some of those things, you know, kids don't think about it till the last minute.
They don't. And these tools are incredibly easy for someone to access and complete the process right from their mobile phone.
Okay, how can those, since we just have a few more minutes, unfortunately, and I do want to open up the phones for people to talk about the Christian involvement in elections and the importance of Christians being involved. 800-351-1212, even after Jason has to go. But Jason, how do people find out more about you? I get an email from you almost daily, and it's just short, sweet, and informative. So how do people get involved?
Well, I hope you're also getting some emails from Mike Huckabee, because he's sending some out too. So, but just go to our website, myfaithvotes.org. And you can sign up right there. The biggest thing that I would ask people to do is right there on our homepage is a pledge to vote. And when you sign up there, you will also receive some emails from us. You can always choose to unsubscribe if you don't want that many. But pledge to vote. When you pledge, you're pledging to pray, think, and vote in every election opportunity that you have. I often say Galatians 6:10. It says, as we have opportunity, let us do good. And a vote is an opportunity to do good.
Well, it absolutely is. Ladies and gentlemen, you can go to My Faith Votes. Also today, you can click through from pointofview.net, and you can go right directly to My Faith Votes. Jason, thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope, since you're here in Dallas, you can do this with us again.
Let's do it again for sure.
Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us, and we will be taking your calls in the next segment. It's Open Lines, 800-351-1212. We'll be back after these messages.
Here's some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for health insurance, or more importantly, if you sign up for a plan that you're just not happy with, you still have a choice. It's called MediShare, and MediShare is a Christian healthcare sharing program. It's been around for 25 years. They have more than 400,000 members now around the country. And get this, over the years, MediShare members have shared more than $2 billion of each other's medical bills, so they could help share your needs too. And best of all, you could save a lot of money with MediShare. The typical savings for a family is around $500 a month. Your savings could be more or less, but think about what you could do with that extra money every month. So if you think you're stuck with a high-cost health plan that doesn't have much to offer, think again. You can join MediShare anytime, so call them today and check it out. There's no pressure. They're super easy to talk to. 855-90-BIBLE. That's 855-90-BIBLE. 855-90-BIBLE.
It takes a team to win. Be part of Point of View's Truth Team and bring truth and healing to America. Go to pointofview.net/team, pointofview.net/team, and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
And our guest in the last couple of segments, Jason Yates, his organization, which is My Faith Votes, put out a note after the vote yesterday in the U.S. Senate, saying that by a vote of 53 to 44, the Senate blocked the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. It required 60 votes to actually get the vote on this to overcome the filibuster. The legislation was about one thing: a baby that survived an abortion receiving medical care. Should be a no-brainer, shouldn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Unfortunately, it didn't move forward because it didn't get the required 60 votes. And those opposed to the legislation argued really that this would limit a woman's access to safe abortion and health care, and that's got to be their highest value. 3 Democrats voted for it. And if the reason I'm telling you this is because if you go to pointofview.net and you can click on, it's very prominent, the Born Alive Survivors Protection Act. We've been talking about it 4 days. It's there. You can find out from going there who voted how. So if your senators voted for or against it. And also there's a way to weigh in with your senator on how you feel about how that person voted on this bill. And it's very simple. You just click on, it's prominent on the website, and you can click on it and you can go in and fill in your information, and you'll be able to, there's a message there. You can change it or use it, and you can go in and say that you're happy or you're not happy with how your senators voted. 3 Democrats, Robert Casey of Pennsylvania, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, and Doug Jones of Alabama voted with Republicans in favor of the legislation. All Republicans that voted for it. There were 3 Republicans that did not vote on the bill for various reasons. I know that Tim Scott of South Carolina was delayed because of weather, I think, a flight. He didn't vote. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska didn't vote, and Kevin Kramer of North Dakota didn't vote. Certainly, this is a disappointing result. We ought to be able to protect a baby that's born alive, even if the intention of the mother was to abort that baby. That's a human being, and I'm sure there'll be more efforts to do so in the future. Ben Sasse of Nebraska was the one that sort of spearheaded this, and he did it in the aftermath of the draconian late-term abortion legislation passed in New York and the attempt to do the same thing in Virginia and those high-profile actions by those legislatures. So it's a sad day to be able to report that and to have to report that. But here's some good news. I think this has come out of, basically it's come out of all this legislative action at the state level and this bill. There's been a poll, and I mentioned it earlier. We posted it at pointofview.net, but I just want to kind of hit it a little bit more and let you rejoice with me that at least pro-life sentiment is going in a positive direction in this country. This is a new poll. It's the Marist poll, and it's conducted for the Knights of Columbus. It's sort of a Catholic-based group that actually offers this poll, but it's a very prestigious organization for polling. Americans are now as likely to identify as pro-life as pro-choice. 47% self-identify as pro-life in this poll, and 47% self-identify as pro-choice. And they polled Democrats. The gap between pro-life and pro-choice was cut in half. It was 55% pro-life. See, the gap between pro-life and pro-choice, it was 55%, and the gap was cut to 27%. The number of Democrats now identifying as pro-life is 34%, up from 24% last month. So in 1 month, you had the number of Democrats saying they're pro-life rising to 34% from 20%. That's amazing. And it probably has a lot to do with just what's in the news and looking at this and deciding, I don't really think I'm for abortion on demand the way I thought I was when I look at how late term this can go. The poll also found that nearly 3 out of 4 Americans, 71%, agree that abortion should be generally illegal during the 3rd trimester. 25% say it should be legal. So most Americans don't like 3rd trimester abortions. This poll was published yesterday, the same day that this vote took place. And then there's one more thing that was mentioned by our guest, Jason Yates. 80% of Americans think abortion should actually all be confined to the first 3 months of pregnancy. So people just don't like late-term abortion. Now, it's really consistent to go back, as our first guest of the program today, Briscoe Cain, did, and talk about the heartbeat, which can be heard at 6 weeks. because a life is a life, and we know that as believers. And we can look at the scriptures, even in Psalm 139, which I can look up and read from a little bit later in the program. But that is a human life. God knew us before we were even conceived. And certainly in the womb, he's overseeing the formation of this human being in the mother's womb. And so the consistent position on life is to protect it from the moment of conception. But as I said earlier in the program, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so when you paint the picture, as Ben Sass did, of this little baby who the mom meant to abort, the doctor meant to abort, but somehow that baby survived the abortion and is born alive, what do you do then? You got to make a decision. And it's really a human rights issue. It's not, as the pro-abortion spokespeople have been saying, it's not really an affront to Roe versus Wade. We're talking about a baby that's been born. We're not really talking about abortion. And I did read yesterday in the Daily Signal, which is the news outlet of the Heritage Foundation, about a woman. She's 41 years old now, but she's soaked in a toxic salt solution for 5 days. Her mother meant to abort her. When that happens, you are basically poisoned and scalded. And 3 days is supposed to take care of that. And the baby's supposed to die. I'm being pretty graphic here. But she soaked there for 5 days, and she survived. And she's 41 years old, and now she's speaking out on this issue. She met the president. She met President Trump, and she said she's connected with 269 abortion survivors. And from 2003 to 2014, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported 143 cases of infants surviving abortion. That's the ones reported by the CDC, and you know there are many more. So, I'd love to just open up the phones, ladies and gentlemen, for the rest of the hour so that you could weigh in on this issue. How do you feel about the fact that the United States Senate could not even protect babies born alive, that they couldn't even see their way clear to require doctors protect those babies? There was another bill that was, and let me just give you the number again, 800-351-1212. We'd love to hear from you to talk about this. I haven't emphasized the phones much today on the program, but the number again is 800-351-1212. And just to talk about the importance of the issue of the sanctity of human life, there was a bill passed, the Born Alive Infants Protection Act, and that bill was signed into law, and it says that those children that are born meant to be aborted but born alive are persons under the law. But the bill doesn't require that doctors provide the care for them, and so the baby can be left to die, and that's sometimes what's happening. And there are no clear legal consequences. So the bill that was voted on yesterday, the Abortion Survivor Protection Bill, it's a different bill. That bill provides the penalties. It puts the teeth into the law that were needed. So, again, the Abortion Survivor Protection Bill, I think you'll see it again, requires proper medical care be given to infants who survive an abortion, and also criminal penalties for practitioners who fail to provide that care for those babies. Well, the phones are lighting up, ladies and gentlemen. We would love to hear from you. And I want to point you to our website during the break, because you can find out how your senator voted. And you can also weigh in with your senator very easily. Just go to the Born Alive Survivors Protection Act picture. It's a beautiful picture of a baby. You can click there and you can weigh in with your United States senator on his or her actions yesterday in that vote. It's an easy way to do it. We try to provide that here at Point of View. So also, while there, I think the program today is pointing up the importance of Point of View, the ability to inform and educate you. And if you'd like to help us do that by donating, you can do that at pointofview.net. Stay with us for more. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. In May of 1915, Major John McCrae buried his friend. It is believed that after the burial, he penned the now famous poem, In Flanders Fields. This is what he wrote. In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunsets glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. The reference to crosses was no accident. These were the markers used for temporary gravestones across Europe. When the graves were made permanent, the world community rejected efforts to convert the temporary cross-shaped gravestones into rounded tombstones. That is why today, across America, many veterans' memorials are cross-shaped. And that is why we defend them. Today, the foe of McCrae's poem are those wishing to purge the religious from public view, including veterans' memorials bearing religious imagery. But we will not break faith with those who died. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
I'm Kelly Shackelford, President and Chief Counsel of First Liberty Institute. Let me ask you, what if America's best attorneys from the very top law firms got together to defend religious freedom in court? That's exactly what's happening at First Liberty. And the best news? We're winning over 90% of our legal actions. Come learn more at firstliberty.org. You'll be encouraged. That's firstliberty.org.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
We've got a full bank of phones. It seems to have struck a chord to think that the United States Senate was not able to protect babies born alive after an attempted abortion through a vote yesterday. And so let's just start taking the calls. Let's get to it. I promised I would. Let's go to North Carolina, first of all, and speak with Andrea. Hi, Andrea. Thanks for calling in.
I about lost you because I don't know what happened, but, well, I'm mixed up. Help me. I thought we got rid of partial birth abortion, the whole thing was a trimester thing. So what is this reproductive thing, healthcare thing in New York where the baby's born alive in there? But what happened with the partial birth abortion thing?
You could be, you definitely could be excused for being confused on that issue. Well, partial birth abortion is one form of late-term abortion, and the baby is intact.
I thought we got rid of it.
Yes, it's illegal across the nation, and it shouldn't be done in any state. But there's another way of doing those late-term abortions, and again, I'm forced to be graphic to describe it, but it's basically tearing the child limb from limb at the late term, and
that's just political. Then that's all.
So the partial birth abortion ban is one way of doing late term abortions, but there are others, and so those abortions are still done.
Issue, huh? Very complicated.
Well, it's complicated. It's not really that complicated. It's a human life, and just because it hasn't been born yet, it's a few weeks from being born, still a human being, and so I think people can get that picture in their minds and understand that we should at least be able to ban the baby after they're born and survive the abortion. But even these states that are Andrea, I mean, I know that you're just as disgusted as I am, but these states that are putting into their laws the right, and just, I mean, it was already a right under Roe versus Wade in a sense, but the states are basically codifying it, getting ready in case Roe versus Wade is struck down, so that they can make sure their states can do all these late-term abortions.
Morning after pill is still legal, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that's not good either, but that's very pretty. That's cosmetic, and it's still legal, correct?
It's still legal, and it works by causing an abortion. For the most part.
Abortion, right?
For the most part, yeah. Most of the time, that's how they work.
Yeah, I know what
Even
that
some
is.
birth control works by causing
We've
the
got
death of the baby.
Just to end on a positive note, we have a pregnancy care event here. I'll be attending that March 7th in Morehead City at the Civic Center there. You know, I haven't been on the front line so much with it, but I'm very angry. I'm very, very angry, so I'll be there. And I think that's important that, like you said earlier, I loved hearing that people are more pro-life than they were, so people are sort of waking up to the lie, right? You know.
Yes, and you know, I'm glad you mentioned pregnancy care events and pregnancy care centers.
March 7th for us. Yeah.
Okay, well, if anybody's listening and wants to participate, you can find out more about that. But these pregnancy care centers are far more numerous across the nation than abortion clinics, and they are a positive way of dealing with a pregnancy that someone has surprised someone and they don't want it. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Last night, I was having dinner with some friends who are, well, let's just say they're grandmother age. And they talked about when maybe their final child and their family was when they found themselves pregnant with that child, they really weren't ready to have another one, and we were having this conversation about the last child, and they were saying, I wasn't ready. I had others. I was busy. I had a job, and I didn't feel that way about my last child. I was so excited because I had two boys and I needed my girl, but it was so interesting to hear, you know, their mother's heart kicked in at some point, either during the pregnancy or after the baby was born. And this is what happens. And when you make the decision for abortion, you're making a decision to eliminate part of your family and someone, you know, who God created. And so, you know, going forward with life, no matter what the hardship, is always the best idea. All right. And we need to help those people. So the pregnancy centers are a great way to do that. Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate your call.
Thank you, Penna. Thanks. All right, bye.
Let's go to Janice in Missouri. Hi, Janice. Thanks for calling.
Hi. I just had a question regarding the New York law. Has there been any evidence that they are harvesting the baby parts and just really increasing their, you know, monies in New York State?
I don't know particularly about the state of New York, but I know it's been happening, and it's been revealed through this set of videos that's been done that came out about 2.5 years ago, where Planned Parenthood workers were interviewed and undercover and all of that, and it wouldn't surprise me. But I don't know. I don't have the information about New York specifically.
Well, thank you for all your hard work, and God bless your ministry.
God bless you, and thank you for bringing that up. Let's go to Curtis in North Pole, Alaska. Hi, Curtis. Thanks for calling in.
Hi there. Hey, I want to talk about our senior senator, Lisa Murkowski.
Yeah.
She will tell people that she had to come home for a funeral, which was true. We had one of our very first lieutenant governors and one of our men who was on the Constitutional Convention for Alaska die, Jack Coghill. But our other senator came home for the funeral, too, I'm sure, and he made it back.
Interesting.
Only Lisa couldn't make it back to work.
Yeah. You know, I don't know. I feel that I think Tim Scott's campaign, his office, his senatorial office, explained that he couldn't make it. It was really a flight issue, some kind of a delay. And so you have to understand that senators sometimes don't make it back for a vote. And so I was giving her the benefit of the doubt, but this is interesting information that
No,
one
don't-
senator
don't
could
give-
make it and one
don't give
couldn't.
her the benefit of the doubt. She's
Yeah.
strictly pro-abortion.
She didn't have the motivation to get back.
Right. There
All right.
was no rush for Lisa to get back to work.
Curtis, thank you for that piece of information. We appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Again, you can go to pointofview.net. You can find out how your senator voted, and you can also weigh in on that. Hopefully, Curtis will do that with Lisa Murkowski. Let's go to Doug in the state of Texas. Hi, Doug. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, how you doing today?
Great.
I'll be very brief. This touches on a really emotional chord with me. As you know, my wife and I, we tried to have children for a long time. Finally got pregnant with our first one, and along the way we had a couple of miscarriages. My wife used to tell me that I didn't understand how she felt whenever we couldn't get pregnant. She said she felt like it was a death every month whenever we weren't pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't believe, years ago, Francis Schaeffer wrote this book, Whatever Happened to the Human Race. This touches on the very soul of our country. Human life, what are our laws for? What are our regulations for? What do we do the things? Because we want to be a free country. We want to protect people. We want to serve people and love people and watch people grow up and grow families. But whenever you can cast a vote that says this child who was born after a botched abortion, it's okay to let that kid die. To me, I'm horrified at, and one of the reasons I bring up Francis Schaeffer's book is because the point that he made in that film series as well, that got me, was that whenever you see a Salt Lake covered with little baby dolls, millions of them, the huge number sort of numbs us.
Yes, it does. I have to let you go because we're coming up on a break, but thank you for making that point. Some people are desperate to have a child. It's all in how you feel about it, isn't it? Well, stay on this topic. Stay with us.
Roadside Attractions presents Run the Race. Two brothers share an unbreakable bond, but life's unexpected adversities put their future in question.
It's all part of his plan, right?
God does love you. He loves you like crazy.
From executive producers Tim Tebow and Robbie Tebow, Run the Race. Rated PG, parental guidance suggested. Now playing. More information is available at runtheracemovie.com.
Jesus said you could find a person's heart by where they invest their money. We at Point of View could not be more thankful that so many demonstrate a love for truth and for this nation by investing in our common mission. Of course, the reality is our team, our truth team, is a small percentage of those who listen. And right now, as they say in sports, we could use a deeper bench. For those who have given, thank you. And if you haven't made that step yet, take one now. Go to pointofview.net/team or call 800-347-5151. Show your heart for our future. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kirby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Penna Dexter.
And we continue to take your calls here at Point of View, 800-351-1212. The sanctity of human life has been our topic for most of the program here on Point of View. And I have a guest who's joining me now, who has been active in the pro-life movement for decades. He is Allan Parker. He's a very talented attorney. He's president of the Justice Foundation. He has been a professor of law, and but most of his career has been dedicated to justice for the unborn. And he at the Justice Foundation, where he's president, they had and I think it's still in operation, an initiative called Moral Outcry, which I've always loved. It seeks to end the pain of abortion in America, but mobilizing women and men hurt by abortion to become witnesses, to share their stories. And we have had many of these people in years past on Point of View talking about their abortion and how they regret their abortion. And they've used this in the legal arena. Now, Justice Foundation has initiated a new project, the Moral Outcry. And Allan, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your being with me. Can you explain the Moral Outcry?
Yes, thank you, Penna, and thank you for having me on the program and for all you all do on your program. What an educational piece. The Moral Outcry petition was birthed in prayer by Melinda Thibault, who is a pro-life prayer director at the International House of Prayer in Kansas City. They pray for the end of abortion. And during prayer, she felt impressed by the Lord that she was supposed to write a petition to the Supreme Court of the United States, asking them to reverse their abortion cases. I think I was the only lawyer she knew, but she called me. And initially I thought, I'm not sure you can do that. And I said, I'll pray about it. And in prayer with me and Melinda, the Lord gave us the plan and the idea and the name to Melinda called the Moral Outcry Petition. And we do have the right to petition our government for redress of grievances. That's the First Amendment. And it is the Supreme Court who has created the grievance of killing infant life in the womb. And I use the word infant life because even the Supreme Court has admitted in Gonzalez v. Carhart that some women come to regret aborting the infant life they once created and sustained, and that abortion occurred in the womb. So the Supreme Court admits it's infant life, but they allow women to continue to take the life of their children. However, I believe the Lord is moving us to a new day with a new Supreme Court that's open to reversing Roe v. Wade. And that's what the Moral Outcry petition does. And the way we present the petition to the court is through amicus curiae, or friend of the court briefs. I'm licensed to practice before the Supreme Court. That's where most of our court occurs, our work occurs. And you mentioned the Operation Outcry. That quote that I just quoted from Gonzalez v. Carhart, where the Supreme Court said, some women come to regret aborting the infant life they once created and sustained. They quoted 2 pages of our brief on behalf of 180 women hurt by abortion and Sandra Cano, who was the Doe of Dovey Bolton, for that proposition. In other words, the testimony of Operation Outcry, women speaking the truth, and we taking that truth to the court cited the 2 pages of our brief where the women's testimonies were to say that some women come to regret aborting the infant life they once created.
Allan, a lot of people don't realize that Norma McCorvey of Roe versus Wade and Sandra Cano of Doe versus Bolton both turned, they changed their minds. They regretted their abortions.
That's right. And I believe that in the next couple of years, when the Supreme Court reverses Roe v. Wade, they'll actually cite to that fact. They'll say, either in a footnote or in the main opinion, by the way, the two women whose cases we are reversing today, Norma McCorvey of Roe v. Wade and Sandra Cano of Doe v. Bolton, the two cases that brought abortion to America, both filed motions with this court asking us to reverse their cases. And today we join them in reversing these cases and moving for America forward to a better day for babies, mothers, and society.
So you see a Roe versus Wade being reversed in the next couple of years, and I know a lot of people agree with that or are worried on the pro-abortion side are worried about it. And you've seen even states passing these laws, and it's encouraging to see states like Texas getting working on a heartbeat bill, and then other states like New York. It's very discouraging to see them codifying and solidifying late-term abortion in their state. So you're seeing all this activity, and it's very high profile. And yet I know a lot of pro-lifers who say, no way, Roe cannot be overturned that quickly. What is the basis for you thinking that it can?
Well, they probably never thought a person like Donald Trump could get elected president in the United States. But I believe, I'll just give you a little scripture. When the Lord told us to collect the women's testimonies 19 years ago, I said, Lord, is this really you? Do you want us to do it?
Where are you, Allan? It's hard. We're having trouble hearing you clearly.
Oh, sorry. All right. Is that better now?
Yes.
Let me just keep it close. I'm sorry. I'll keep the microphone close. The Lord directed me to a passage of Scripture in Isaiah 28, and it says in Isaiah 28:14, "Behold, thus saith the Lord to the mocking rulers who rule my people in Jerusalem. Behold, you've made a covenant with death, an agreement with the grave. You don't think the overwhelming scourge will reach you because you've covered yourself with fraud and deception. But I will make justice the plumb line, righteousness the measuring line, and waters will overflow the secret place, and your covenant with death will be annulled. The agreement with the grave will not stand." And later I learned that the abolitionist called Dred Scott a covenant with death based on that same scripture. And in verse 18 it says, "I, the Lord, will rise up as at Mount Perazim to do my amazing work, my extraordinary work, my unusual task." And I believe the election of Donald Trump was the most amazing, unusual, alien thing in American political history. And it was about abortion. He pledged more than any Republican candidate would ever have done. They just appointed strict constructionists, they said. He said, I'll appoint 2 or 3 judges who will reverse Roe v. Wade. And he got elected president, pledging to do it. So that was an amazing thing. Then the nomination and confirmation of Neil Gorsuch was amazing and unusual. They used the nuclear option to get him on the court, breaking a filibuster, which they still don't only use for court nominations. And then third, the Kavanaugh hearing was the most amazing and unusual and alien thing we've ever seen in American judicial history. So God is working. And even this New York thing, there was a new poll came out, Mayor's poll yesterday, said the amount of people calling themselves pro-life has gone up 15 points in the last 2 months.
We posted that poll. Let me jump in, Allan, because we're about on a break, and we'll pick that up after the break. But during the break, you can go to pointofview.net and check out that poll. We've put a little summary of it up at pointofview.net. You can also weigh in on how your senator, with your senator, on how he or she voted on the bill to protect already born infants. Do that, and we'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Senator Ben Sasse is puzzled. He can't understand why his colleagues in the U.S. Senate don't support his legislative attempt to prevent infanticide from becoming medical practice in this country. He says infanticide shouldn't be a partisan issue. Every single public servant should be able to say it's wrong to leave newborn babies to die. One of the best reasons for this bill came from comments by the governor of Virginia. Ralph Northam explained that an infant would be delivered and resuscitated if that's what the mother and family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. Senator Sasse admits the governor's frankness is rare, no euphemisms, no weasel words. After the national rejection of the governor's words, you would think the U.S. Senate would quickly pass the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. That did not happen. The bill would require that doctors provide the same level of care to the child born from a botched abortion that they would provide to any other baby at the same state of development. During the 1990s, we heard from many Democratic leaders that they wanted abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. When candidate Bill Clinton and later President Bill Clinton would say that phrase, he would even emphasize the word rare. This is not the Democratic Party of today. The state of New York passed legislation that would essentially allow abortion up to birth. It now appears that Democratic leaders are trying to double down on the issue of abortion, perhaps because they fear the Supreme Court might overturn Roe v. Wade. Senator Sasse concludes that it should not be difficult for the members of the U.S. Congress to affirm that a child outside the womb deserves the protection of our law. Apparently, for some members of Congress, that is asking too much. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From roadside attractions, Run the Race. Two brothers share an unbreakable bond, but life's unexpected adversities put their future in question. Run the Race, rated PG, now playing.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
There's something happening, some kind of a move of God, perhaps, with regard to the protection of life in the womb. And it's possible, says our guest, that it won't be that long before Roe versus Wade is overturned. He has a petition to sign people onto an amicus brief to do so. Can you explain again that petition, Allan, and how people could sign it? I know they can click to your website and sign it through pointofview.net or go directly to your site, the Moral Outcry, but explain what they'd be signing.
Excellent. The moraloutcry.com is the petition, or you can get on your website, and it gives the Supreme Court 5 reasons why Roe v. Wade should be overturned. Right now, we're kind of where we were in 1992 when 5 judges said in writing that Roe v. Wade had been wrongly decided. But they decided not to overturn Roe v. Wade because women had come to rely upon it. You may remember when Senator Collins asked Justice Kavanaugh in private, she said, when explaining her vote, if 5 judges thought Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided, is that enough under the law of precedent to reverse it? And he said, no, it's not. And that's consistent with an amazing book that he helped co-author called The Law of Judicial Precedent. This is an amazing thing. It came out in 2016, and he was a co-author, and Gorsuch was a co-author, Justice Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, and with a foreword by Justice Stephen Breyer. So 3 Supreme Court justices are on this book on the law of judicial precedent. And it explains when the Supreme Court should overturn one of its own decisions. And Section 47D is part of the basis for this petition to the Supreme Court, because it says one of the reasons to overturn a Supreme Court decision is if it has been met with general dissatisfaction, protest, or severe criticism. And Roe has been severely criticized. But every time someone signs the petition, and we now have over 160,000 already, our goal is over 1 million, every signature is a severe criticism of the Supreme Court. Because the first criticism is abortion is a crime against humanity. The big issue of our day is abortion a fundamental human right, like New York would say, or is it a crime against humanity, like we say? And the petition says it's a crime against humanity, just like the Dred Scott slavery decision of the Supreme Court was a crime against humanity, just like Plessy versus Ferguson, the segregation decision was a crime against humanity. A crime against humanity occurs when the government withdraws legal protection from a class of human beings. So by signing the petition and allowing your name to be put into the official records of the Supreme Court as agreeing with that statement and our other 4 reasons, we will continually say to the Supreme Court, this has not been accepted by Americans. We are severely criticizing it. It is severely wrong, not just wrong. And that's the first step. But there are 4 other reasons, too.
Well, let me ask you, okay, so this brief would be attached to whatever case reached the court, the Supreme Court?
Exactly. This is a multi-phase public interest litigation strategy, and that involves the whole public. It's different from private litigation. We're a public interest litigation foundation, like the ACLU, like some of the names on the other side. But we're impacting the public, and we're engaging the public, and we have the right to do that. And it will not only be in one brief, it will be in every abortion case that comes before the Supreme Court. We're writing one right now in the Indiana sonogram law, but we don't know if the Supreme Court will take that case. But every time this will be our 3rd brief with this. The first brief had 57,000 names. The second had 74,000 names. This brief will have 160,000, Lord willing. That's how many names we have, and we've got to get it done and filed by March 6th. But this argument will support every abortion or pro-life tactic out there. It could be, we don't know which case will be the one that reverses Wade. It could be a 15-week ban. It could be a 20-week ban. It could be a dismemberment bill. It could be the heartbeat bill. Any case in which the other side is saying, you can't do this, whatever the state law said, because of Roe v. Wade, could be the one where they said, you're right, we're now going to reverse Roe v. Wade. So it could be a little case like a burial or of fetal remains, or it could be a big case like a heartbeat bill. It just depends when the court is ready to take it. That's why, if I could, I'd like to say the other 4 reasons.
Yes. Let me jump in, though. Let me ask you a question, because I can already see that we are going to run out of time. I wonder if you have 15 more minutes to stick with us for another segment.
Yes, I do.
I know you're very busy getting ready for all this, but I know that especially I've opened the phones at 800-351-1212. So if anyone has a question for Allan Parker, call right away, because we've got one more segment with him after this one. Thank you for doing that. Now go into reason number 2.
All right. The second reason is that new evidence shows that life begins at conception. It's very important under the law of precedent that it be new evidence that didn't exist in 1973, because the law of precedent says if science changes in advance, then we may have to change old laws. And in 1973, in Roe, the court said, literally, I'm quoting, at this state in the development of man's knowledge, the judiciary cannot determine when life begins. So they literally admitted, we don't know when life begins. Well, think of the amazing scientific advances. I'll just give 2. One is DNA testing. That didn't happen until about the 1980s. And now we know if we took a DNA sample from the child in the womb and a DNA sample from the woman and sent them anonymously to a lab, they'd say, there's 2 separate human beings here. Bang, DNA proves it. Another example is the sonogram. Those didn't come out to the late 80s in widespread practice. So we couldn't see that baby in the womb that we now see through sonogram laws. That's why we're filing a brief in a sonogram case. It's so important to show the scientific evidence. So that's number two. And why? Okay, if the science changes, we should change our laws. Number three is abortion hurts women. And we've already seen that those women's testimonies impacted the court in Gonzalez v. Carhart when they upheld the federal ban on partial birth abortion, and they quoted the 2 pages of our brief on behalf of those women where their testimonies were. So the court has started to begin to realize, ooh, it's an infant life, and we're hurting women. What are we going to do now? And that brings us to the fourth element. There is a major change in law and factual circumstances. That's another reason under the law of precedent you change old court decisions. And what this change is called the safe haven law. Every state has one. And what it means is no woman has to have an abortion to get what she wants from abortion.
When were these laws changed?
They started in 1999 in Texas with the first one, and the 50th was in 2016. So in about 15 years, you had a major social evolution in the law of the United States. Before it was criminal neglect or abandonment, but the safe haven law says, no, you can walk out of the hospital and leave your child behind or drop her off at a fire station or hospital or emergency room within a certain period of time after birth. No questions asked, no cost. It's free compared to an expensive abortion. And the state will care for your baby until they reach 18 or they find an adopted family. Now think about that. It's equally available to the rich and the poor because it's free. There's no coat hanger abortion need because we're not going back to when you couldn't give your child to the state. And so now we have a better alternative for women. And we can say, don't kill the baby, don't hurt yourself, and give the child to society. We will help you now. And that's an evolution of society. And the fifth element
Let's jump in before the fifth one because it's going to be a break. And this safe haven law, you know, it's amazing. That is not well publicized that law exists. And I also think that a lot of folks, you know, out of sight, out of mind, for some really kind of sick reason, some people are more comfortable with the death of the baby and it's gone. That he or she is gone.
I can explain that
rather than, because rather than knowing that that child is alive somewhere. But the regrets of abortion that you have uncovered through Operation Outcry, I think show us, you know, all of those testimonies and others. And we've had so many people on our program talking about regretting their abortion and crying in the, you know, on the phone with us. And this is widespread across the nation. It's really an open sore, and it's becoming more and more open. So, you know, the idea that you could have a law that allows women to, you know, they don't feel they can raise a child, but they can certainly still allow that child to live. It's new information to some people. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're taking your calls 800-351-1212. If you have a question for Allan Parker, he'll stay with us for another segment. We'll be right back.
Question: do you have a health insurance plan you are not happy with? Well, Bethany and Jason thought they were stuck. Their plan just kept getting more expensive, and Bethany's favorite doctor didn't even take that plan anymore. And then some friends at church told them about Medishare.
With our previous insurance, we were paying $1,200 a month. With Medishare, we now pay around $600 a month.
Yes, they're paying $600 less per month, and that's a pretty typical savings with Medishare. And they actually like Medishare more.
I was able to go back to my original doctor that I absolutely loved, and it's just been an absolutely beautiful thing being a part of Medishare.
Yeah, so they pay a lot less, and they like it more. No wonder Medishare is growing so fast. Find out more. They're super easy to talk to. All you have to do is call 855-90-BIBLE. That's 855-90-BIBLE. 855-90-BIBLE.
It takes a team to win. Be part of Point of View's Truth Team and bring truth and healing to America. Go to pointofview.net/team, pointofview.net/team, and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, is Penna Dexter.
And my guest is Allan Parker, president of the Justice Foundation. One of their projects that we are discussing is the Moral Outcry. It's a ministry of the Justice Foundation. I might mention Allan Parker was lead counsel for Norma McCorvey, formerly Roe of Roe versus Wade, and also Sandra Cano of Doe versus Bolton, in their efforts to overturn those two landmark cases, Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton. He's very optimistic on the idea that Roe versus Wade could be overturned, and I'm going to ask him a little bit later just to guess what kind of a case it might be that would end up overturning it. But I want to go back, Allan, to this safe haven laws, because people are, as I said, they're unaware of this. And we're getting calls even during the break about that. So could you explain that further?
Yes. And if I don't know if it's on your website yet, but if people want to find out about their state law, there is a good National Safe Haven Alliance.org website, National Safe Haven Alliance, or just Google Safe Haven, and you can click on each state, because it varies a little bit, but the general procedure is you drop it off at a safe place. The states usually say hospital, fire station, or EMS place, or a police station maybe, where the child can get good care right away. And you can walk out of the hospital and leave the baby behind, since that's a drop-off place. And if the times vary a little bit, as early as 3 days in California, up to a year in North Dakota.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a funny story about that. They did not put a limit on their law at first. And you know who was dropping the kids off?
Middle school kids?
Teenagers. Yes, teenagers. So they put it 1 year. Now, these laws it's usually 30, 60, or 90 days. For example, it's 60 in Texas, where I'm calling you from. So, and that's pretty customary, 30, 60, or 90 days. These were designed to save dumpster babies, women who give birth to the baby and then dump it in a toilet or a trash can or a dumpster. The baby dies and the mother's charged with murder because it is a baby born alive, just like you were talking about. That's always been murder in America. But we now want to give her a little bit more space. But it can be used as an alternative adoption method. Women could choose an open adoption where they could choose to pick their child's parents and be involved in it and even have open adoption and maybe some visitation rights, or they could have a hands-off adoption, just walk out of the hospital, leave the baby behind. Because you said earlier, what some women will say, I'd rather kill my child than put the child up for adoption. And from their standpoint, they think that thinking about the child later will cause them emotional trauma. And there's some truth to that. But even when you kill your child, the emotional trauma comes because you begin to think, how old would that baby be now? Many women don't realize that there is a strong bond between mother and child that when you abort the child doesn't go away. And that's part of why there's so much psychological damage and trauma when you abort your woman. The ideal is, get married, have a man and a woman, have a baby, and live together and raise that child with two people. That's the ideal. But, not everybody gets the ideal. The minimum legal standard is we don't kill innocent children because of hard circumstances. We help people in those circumstances. And that's where we want to do with the safe haven. To the woman, we're going to do justice to the baby. Don't kill the baby. But we're going to give mercy to the mother. You don't have to raise it. Because here's the reason women have abortions. There's basically two kinds of reasons. One is, I can't take care of another baby. Maybe she's got 6 kids and she can't afford another. Maybe she has 3 kids and her husband just divorced her. I represent 4,600 women who've had abortions. There are some terribly difficult circumstances. Not that they or I would justify it, but there's this pressure. And then, so we say, but don't kill the baby. Don't hurt yourself. We'll relieve the pressure. We'll take the baby from you. And that leads us to the 5th element.
Let me take a call really quick.
Okay,
We've got to
sure.
caller who wants to ask
Sure.
you about Safe Haven. So before we get off that, Steve
Sure.
in Maine. Hi, Steve. Thanks for calling.
Hi, thank you. I had a question, and the more listening to you talk, it's kind of led me to kind of an answer on that. And I was going to ask, what if the mother had some apprehension about, in the first place, going into the hospital because of costs associated with that part of the giving birth? If she couldn't afford that, she had no means to pay for that, or something like that. But I realize now that this is giving her the opportunity after the fact. I think it's I think your point on that not enough there's not enough public awareness of this type of thing. Sadly, that's the fact with many issues. So yeah, I mean, I think you guys hit the nail right on the head with that. But I certainly had never heard of anything like that, and then I'm sure many others haven't. And yeah, get the word out there, man. That's
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. We appreciate that call. It kind of affirms
Thank
what we were
you.
thinking here.
Yes. And we've had a generous donor give a seed that we're going to try to start a national campaign in May, June, July, and August of this year to make this more publicly known across the nation. So maybe we can come back and do an hour
Yes.
show with you just on Safe Haven, how it works. Yes.
Yes, we can. Now, reason number 5 is a great reason for overturning Roe.
Right. Some people say, well, what about these babies? They're just given back to the state. What's going to happen? Are they going to be in foster care? Well, this is an amazing new factual development in America that didn't exist in 1973 and didn't exist in 1992. And that's an important date because Planned Parenthood v. Casey in 1992 was the last time the Supreme Court reevaluated Roe v. Wade. They've applied it, but they've never reevaluated again since 1992. In fact, in Gonzalez v. Carhart in 2007, when they cited our testimonies and they upheld the partial birth abortion ban, they actually said, we will merely assume that Roe v. Wade is good law for the purpose of this decision. So, again, they didn't even say it is good law. They just assumed it, which sort of scared the other side. That's why they're desperate to pass these laws now before Roe v. Wade is reversed. They are terrified, and I'm happy. So I sort of lost my train there.
Yes,
What was the
well,
question?
I think a lot of our listeners are happy that we're at this
Yes.
point.
Yeah.
I am.
Oh, what will happen to the children? There's 1 million people now waiting to adopt healthy newborn infants in America. There's a huge infertility problem. A lot of people can't have children when they want to have children. And so there's about 500,000 couples, about 1 million people waiting to adopt healthy newborn children, which is what the Safe Haven law produces. The woman has to bring the baby in within a relatively short time, 60, 90 days of birth. The hospital checks it out. This is a healthy baby, or maybe there's a cleft palate or something. And then the hospital will say, we'll take care of that. So in other words, you know what you're getting, to use a term. And many people desperately want their own baby. And right now it costs $10,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 to adopt a healthy baby. This would eliminate it. The state would simply say, get on the list. When a baby comes in, we'll call the next person up, and you can adopt this baby. So it's a win-win-win for society. It's a win for the baby. It's a win for the mother. And it's a win for these amazing families who are desperate to adopt children, but there's no supply of them because, candidly, the children are being killed. So we're going to say as a society, let's stop killing the children. Let's reallocate to the homes that need it. Empty arms syndrome is what it's called when you're longing for that baby. And it's a very tangible,
it's real,
painful thing to
and
go
visceral.
through. It is.
We all know people who are hoping and wishing and grieving that they haven't had their own child. But, the Lord sometimes has his ways of allowing people to be taken care of in the society, and this is a good one. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can go to pointofview.net and click through to the Moral Outcry website, or go directly to the Moral Outcry website and sign the petition. And again, Alan, just explain what they're signing very quickly. We've got about a minute.
Okay, great. Your name will be placed into the official records of the United States in appropriate friend of the court briefs where we feel it's important to say to them, this case could be the one that could reverse Roe v. Wade. why don't you reverse Roe v. Wade? And here's the 5 reasons why you ought to do it. So we provide evidence of severe criticism. Your mere signature is evidence under the law of precedent that they ought to overturn it. Now, we don't know how many it will take, but that's why we have 5 reasons. But you can tell that God is on the move, and I believe the covenant with death will be annulled. We don't share your name with other people. This is a legitimate thing. We've already filed 3 briefs. We represent our client at no charge.
Allan, thank you for what you're doing.
Everybody can do.
And for explaining it. Again, go to pointofview.net, click through to Moral Outcry, and give us a call if you'd like to weigh in on the overturn of Roe versus Wade, 800-351-1212.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. In May of 1915, Major John McCrae buried his friend. It is believed that after the burial, he penned the now famous poem, In Flanders Fields. This is what he wrote. In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunsets glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. The reference to crosses was no accident. These were the markers used for temporary gravestones across Europe. When the graves were made permanent, the world community rejected efforts to convert the temporary cross-shaped gravestones into rounded tombstones. That is why today, across America, many veterans' memorials are cross-shaped. And that is why we defend them. Today, the foe of McCrae's poem are those wishing to purge the religious from public view, including veterans' memorials bearing religious imagery. But we will not break faith with those who died. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
I'm Kelly Shackelford, President and Chief Counsel of First Liberty Institute. Let me ask you, what if America's best attorneys from the very top law firms got together to defend religious freedom in court? That's exactly what's happening at First Liberty. And the best news? We're winning over 90% of our legal actions. Come learn more at firstliberty.org. You'll be encouraged. That's firstliberty.org.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Let me remind you, in case you've forgotten, we talk about this often on Point of View, especially with the attorneys from First Liberty Institute, that tomorrow oral arguments will take place over a Christian war memorial, and it's the Bladensburg cross-shaped memorial. The case is the American Legion versus the American Humanist Association. The American Legion maintains the cross, and it stands at an intersection along the National Defense Highway. This case is being argued at the Supreme Court tomorrow. Kelly Shackelford, who is our co-host on Fridays and many other days here on Point of View, is there. And many of the other attorneys from First Liberty Institute also. They'll be watching the arguments. It's their case. And they're representing the American Legion. So it's a big day tomorrow. So just be praying for that, ladies and gentlemen. Allan Parker has stuck with me. I'm so glad because the time goes so fast sometimes when you're discussing these issues. And this is so exciting to Point of View listeners to think of the overturn of Roe versus Wade. And you can participate, ladies and gentlemen, by signing the petition that Moral Outcry has placed on the web. It's at, just go to pointofview.net and you can click on Moral Outcry. And Allan, I had to explain it a couple times, but explain one more time why they would sign this petition. Why would the court look at this amicus brief? How are you hoping the Supreme Court will look at it? And what kind of case do you think might get up there to overturn Roe?
I do think, and we've actually had meetings with many pro-life leaders together. We've got about 45 major Christian leaders endorsing this concept. Dr. Dobson has endorsed it, for example. Everybody knows his name. Mm-hmm. Tim Wildman of American Family Association. The way you participate in argument at the Supreme Court is through writing briefs. Everybody thinks of the person up there standing orally arguing the case, but in a major case like abortion, there would be maybe 50 briefs on both sides of the issue. And part of the reason that you need many voices is to provide many perspectives to the court. The attorney generals of states are normally trying to defend their statutes on the narrowest grounds possible. Let me take the example of the sonogram law. Planned Parenthood, an informed consent law like a sonogram law says simply, hey, don't you think you should know what you're taking out of your uterus when the abortionist tells you we're going to empty the contents of the uterus and terminate your pregnancy? That's very misleading language. What they don't tell you what's in your uterus is a human being. They don't show you a picture of a beating heart. So some of the states have said, we are going to force the abortionist, who should do this anyway if he was trying to give a reasonable patient all the information to make an informed decision. But they've had to force abortionists by law to show women the sonogram. Now, the abortionist does the sonogram by medical practice. He's going to do it to determine what the age of the pregnancy is or the age of the child and whether it's an ectopic pregnancy or not. So it's going to be done. It's not, they talk about transvaginal sonograms being invasive. That's going to be done anyway, but they just don't want to show it to the woman. So the court has allowed these informed consent things. So a sonogram case could be the one that just says, no, even under Planned Parenthood v. Casey, you can do that. But it could be because the other side is saying, oh, you can't even show us the sonogram. That's too much. That's an undue burden. And you have a waiting period. Some women can't go twice to the doctor to get an abortion. It's too far away. They're too poor. And again, remember, the safe haven is free. It's cheaper than abortion. But anyway, they make these arguments. So the court could say, well, you're right there. If we not only uphold this, we are going to actually reverse Roe v. Wade in this case. Because if you think about it, Planned Parenthood v. Casey was just an informed consent statute and a 24-hour waiting period. It didn't say we're going to ban all abortion. It just said we want to give informed consent. And they considered reevaluating and reversing Roe v. Wade in that case. So I think the sonogram cases are good. I like the heartbeat bills because it shows there's a beating heart. But it could be any kind of case. It could be the 20-week pain-capable ban. And one of the reasons there's such unity on this is it supports all the pro-life litigation. And we won't know until they take it which one the court actually takes.
No, we won't. Now, certain pro-abortion forces are very worried, and states are lining up to be ready because, Allan, and, we have to be clear that if Roe versus Wade is overturned, that doesn't mean all abortion goes away. Right?
That's right. So our petition asked the Supreme Court to reverse Roe v. Wade. That's like the first step to ending slavery.
The first step was to abolish the slave trade. Then they abolished slavery. Really, we will probably have to first reverse Roe v. Wade. Then, in fact, we have to reverse Roe v. Wade to let the people of America decide what the law ought to be. So the Supreme Court would probably say, okay, there's no constitutional right to abortion. The states are now free to do what they want. Some states would immediately do like New York. Others would do like Arkansas just this week or last week now. They passed the first Moral Outcry post-Roe activation bill, or a trigger ban. And they used all the 5 reasons in the Moral Outcry petition, and they said, when Roe v. Wade is reversed, abortion will be illegal the day Roe v. Wade is reversed in Arkansas.
So Roe versus Wade reversed triggers illegality of abortion in Arkansas.
Yes, but only because Arkansas has passed its own state law to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
There's only about 5 states that have done that. So the next phase would be a battle as an American people. Are we going to ban abortion because it's a crime against humanity, or are we going to protect it because it's...
I think we may have lost Allan Parker.
The greatest injustice, the greatest atrocity in the world today, but some people think it's a fundamental human right. The mere fact that we call it a crime against humanity helps defeat that argument.
Wow.
And I believe if we convince millions of Americans that it's a crime against humanity, how do you fix the crime against humanity? The definition was you withdrew legal protection from a class of human beings. To fix that, you have to give that class of human beings, the children in the womb, legal protection. So we're building up support even for banning abortion. But if abortion were banned today, no woman would have to have an abortion to be free of the burden of child care. That's a safe haven. That's the law.
Yeah, that's a key part of it now. Now I'm understanding how key that is.
Yes, because we lost in 1992 when 5 judges thought Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided, but they said women had come to rely upon it. And under the law of precedent, one of the factors in deciding whether you're going to overturn an old law, well, how many people have come to rely upon it? How disruptive will it be to society?
So that takes care of that.
This rule.
The time has gone, Allan. It goes too fast with you. Thank you for giving me an hour. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Penna. Thank you to everyone who's going to sign the Moral Outcry petition. Your names will be recorded, I believe, in heaven, because in the book of Malachi, it says God was watching those who feared the Lord, and he wrote a book of remembrance. So it'll be at the Supreme Court and before the Lord. God bless you all.
God bless you. And ladies and gentlemen, God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Question: do you have a health insurance plan you are not happy with? Well, Bethany and Jason thought they were stuck. Their plan just kept getting more expensive, and Bethany's favorite doctor didn't even take that plan anymore. And then some friends at church told them about Medishare.
With our previous insurance, we were paying $1,200 a month. With Medishare, we now pay around $600 a month.
Yes, they're paying $600 less per month, and that's a pretty typical savings with Medishare. And they actually like Medishare more.
I was able to go back to my original doctor that I absolutely loved, and it's just been an absolutely beautiful thing being a part of Medishare.
Yeah, so they pay a lot less and they like it more. No wonder Medishare is growing so fast. Find out more. They're super easy to talk to. All you have to do is call 855-90-BIBLE. That's 855-90-BIBLE. 855-90-BIBLE.
It takes a team to win. Be part of Point of View's Truth Team and bring truth and healing to America. Go to pointofview.net/team, pointofview.net/team, and 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.